But only 3 people have ever reached the deepest part of the ocean. This isn't science fiction. This is something that actually happened. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the ocean right beneath our feet. And what's even more terrifying is that, in that pitch-black abyss, there are creatures hiding that humans have never seen before. Some of them have been waiting there for 500 million years. Today, I'm going to take you on a deep dive, plunging from the surface all the way into the Earth's deepest trench. Are you ready? Let's dive in. We're plunging straight into the ocean. Sunlight can still penetrate the water here. This region is called the sunlight zone. Seaweed grows like crazy in these parts. Did you know? These underwater forests provide 70% of the Earth's oxygen. That's right. It's not the tropical rainforests. It's the seaweed. Going down another 60 meters. Coral reefs appear. They look like rocks, but they're actually animals, and they're related to jellyfish. There are about 5 trillion coral polyps worldwide, building these vibrant, colorful cities on the ocean floor. But don't let this beautiful view fool you. At a depth of 90 meters, lies the wreckage of a massive ship. The Britannic. She was the sister ship to the Titanic. She sank in 1916, just 3 years after the Titanic. Sinking seems to be the fate of that family line. Let's keep descending, down to 253 meters. We've just surpassed the limit of human free diving. This record was set by a man named Herbert Nitsch. He didn't carry an oxygen tank. He used a torpedo-shaped sled to sink rapidly, holding his breath the entire time. Withstood 25 atmospheres of pressure. Can you imagine that? 25 atmospheres. It's like having 25 elephants standing on your chest. And this is just the beginning. Past 200 meters, we enter the mesopelagic zone, also known as the twilight zone. The sunlight begins to fade. The water shifts from blue to deep gray, and finally to pitch black. This invisible expanse of water is actually home to 90% of all marine life on Earth. First to greet us is the great white shark. These apex predators usually patrol at a depth of 200 meters. They can swim at speeds of 40 kilometers per hour. And can smell a drop of blood from 5 kilometers away. But if you think it's safer to dive deeper, don't be naive. Great white sharks can dive as deep as 300 meters. Even further down, at 564 meters, an unexpected visitor appears. The emperor penguin. You read that right, a penguin. They currently hold the record for the deepest dive of any bird. Underwater, they are as graceful as an entirely different creature, swimming 5 times faster than they walk on land. Who would have thought? Those little guys waddling on the ice are absolute fighter jets underwater? But what's truly unsettling is still to come. At a depth of 600 meters, we encounter the spider crab. The body of this creature is only 30 centimeters wide, but its legs can span up to 4 meters to withstand 61 atmospheres of pressure, the equivalent of 115 elephants standing on them. They have evolved an incredibly hard shell. They have almost no air cavities inside, from the inside out. Continuing our descent to 1,000 meters, the twilight zone disappears completely. We've entered the midnight zone. There's not a single ray of sunlight here. It's pitch black, but in the darkness, something is glowing. Those are deep-sea anglerfish. They have a glowing lure dangling from their heads, specifically to bait their prey. Once a small fish swims into range, that mouth full of sharp teeth will tear anything apart in an instant. But the weirdest part is how they reproduce. The female can grow up to 1.5 meters. And the male? He's only as big as a housefly. The male bites onto the female's body, and then slowly melts, merging into her. He eventually becomes a part of the female's body, completely losing the ability to survive on his own. You heard that right. It's not mating, it's fusion. It's literally 2 fish becoming one. That's the deep sea for you. Even horror movies wouldn't dare write it this way. At 1,200 meters, we encountered the internet-famous blobfish. You've probably seen him in memes. He has an incredibly miserable-looking face, making him look like the most pathetic creature on Earth. But I've got to speak up for him. Those photos were taken after he was dragged to the surface. A blobfish's body is soft, relying on the extreme pressure of the deep sea to hold its shape. Once it's brought up to the surface, the pressure drops sharply, and it's just like a deflated balloon. It collapses into a blob. It wasn't ugly to begin with. Humans are the ones who made it look that way. Continuing down to 1,500 meters, a red phantom appears. It's a giant red jellyfish. You might ask, such a vibrant color, won't that make them easy targets for predators? Quite the opposite. At this depth, red is the first color to vanish from the visible spectrum. In other words, creatures that are completely red are essentially invisible in the deep sea. Yet, at 1,600 meters down, another creature has chosen a completely different strategy. The glass squid. Its body is almost entirely transparent. It doesn't hide in the shadows. It simply makes itself look like nothing at all. Even its eyes, organs that usually give away a position, emit a faint glow to mask any shadow. There are only two ways to survive in the deep sea. Either make yourself invisible to others, or make others too afraid to come near you. Below 2,000 meters, sunlight becomes nothing but a legend. This region is called the bathypelagic zone. Here, we encountered three creatures straight out of a nightmare. The first is the ghost shark, which has a twisted, human-like face. It wasn't discovered until 2002, even though it has existed in the deep sea for over 360 million years. The second is the gulper eel. It can open a mouth even larger than its own body, swallowing its prey whole. Then, it stores the meal in a cage-like secondary jaw to digest it slowly. The third is the vampire squid, which hasn't changed in 300 million years. It is deep red all over, and the tip of each tentacle can emit a ghostly blue light. Its food source is known as marine snow, particles of dead organic matter, drifting down from the upper ocean. Put simply, it survives by eating carcasses, and it feeds on the remains of creatures it has never even seen. 3,800 meters. We've reached the wreckage of the Titanic. A giant ship weighing 52,310 tons. It has been sleeping in this pitch-black seabed for over 110 years. Back then, there were 2,240 people on board. Only 706 survived. Yet, as for the bodies of the victims, hardly any of them reached this place with the ship. Because the natural buoyancy of the human body is far greater than 52,000 tons of steel, this unsinkable ship ended up lying alone in the abyss. Passing beyond the Titanic, we entered the abyssal zone. Below 4,000 meters, the pressure exceeds 400 atmospheres. The water temperature is near freezing. It is a world of eternal darkness. But life still persists here. At 4,300 meters, we encountered a Dumbo octopus. It has two fins on top of its head that look like ears. As they flap, it looks just like Dumbo the elephant flying in the Disney cartoon. It doesn't have an ink sac, because in this pitch-black deep sea, spitting ink is completely meaningless. At 4,900 meters, the tripod fish appeared. This fish has three long, slender fins, which it uses like stilts to prop itself up on the seabed. It stands perfectly still, waiting for food to drift into its mouth with the current. It truly has mastered the art of having its meals served on a silver platter. Beyond 6,000 meters, we entered the Haddle Zone. This area is primarily made up of deep-sea trenches. At 7,200 meters, we discovered a deep-sea ctenophore, a creature so beautiful, it doesn't look like it belongs on Earth. It hasn't changed at all in 500 million years. 7,600 meters. The entrance to the Mariana Trench has appeared. January 23, 1960. Two people. They squeezed into a steel sphere less than 2 meters in diameter and began their descent into the deepest part of the Earth. Their names were Don Walsh and Jacques Piccard. Down they went, passing through the sunlight zone, the twilight zone, the midnight zone, and the abyss. At 8,900 meters, a crack appeared in the viewport. If it were you, what would you do? They chose to keep going, because they knew there was no turning back anyway. Finally, after 4 hours and 47 minutes, their submersible, the Trieste, touched down on the seafloor at 10,984 meters. Challenger Deep. The pressure down there is 1,086 atmospheres, a depth even greater than the height of Mount Everest. 12 people have walked on the moon, but to this day, only 3 people have ever reached this place. So, just how deep is the ocean? Strictly speaking, 10,984 meters is the limit of what we know so far. But have you ever wondered? We've explored less than 5% of our oceans. In that remaining 95% of darkness, what else is hiding? Creatures that haven't changed in 500 million years. Fish that fuse into the bodies of their mates. Or squid that survive by feeding on corpses never seen by the sun. This isn't science fiction. This is real life here on Earth. Perhaps the most terrifying thing about the deep sea isn't the darkness, isn't the pressure, and isn't those bizarre-looking monsters. It's how it reminds us